Prior to discovery of the wave-particle duality principle, scientists could not arrive at the unanimous vision of the nature of the light. Some claimed that light was a flow of particles, corpuscles, later on referred to as photons. As the science went forward, a new theory appeared. This time the light was viewed as a wave. However, it was later when both the variants were rendered correct. The light can be both a wave of particles and a wave. There is various evidence that confirms the particle theory, like the photo effect or the Compton scattering, just like there is plenty of backup for the wave one. Take diffraction and interference. It was already in 1903 when Thomas Young held a well-known experiment which helped bring the science closer to unveiling the phenomenon. The experiment was very simple. He took a source of light and put screen A with a narrow slit behind it. When the light passed from the source through the slit, it acquired the point nature. There was a second screen, screen B, behind the first one. The second screen contained two slits that were located at a distance d from each other. For interference to be observed, two sources of interfering waves need to be coherent. Since initially the light in the experiment originated from one source, when it passed through two slits in the screen B, the scientists got two sources of coherent light, S1 and S2, i.e. slits themselves. We refer to this method as wavefront division. The light from these sources interferes, and the result can be seen on screen E. What do we expect to see there if we base our assumptions upon the corpuscular theory of light? Most likely nothing. You see, particles moving straight ahead would pass through a slit in the first screen and form a spot of light between two slits of the other screen. Or if there were no screen in the front, then we could talk about two bands of light on screen E. And this would have been exactly the case if the slits in the screens were wide enough. But what did our fellow explorer Young see? The area where the waves interfere contained alternating bands with a maximum and minimum light intensity. Moreover, the maximum brightness was observed at the point where the corpuscular theory said there should be no light at all. The intensity in a certain point P located on a screen at the distance x from 0 point is determined by the optical path interference delta, i.e. the difference between the distances of S2 and S1 from the secondary light sources to the point P itself. Using geometry and considering distance I between the screens B and E, we can calculate the delta for the vacuum. Now we use this to calculate distance x for maximum and minimum intensity, where lambda is wavelength. And now the delta x distance is that between the successive maximum and minimum values. We should know that since this value is inversely proportional to a distance between the slits d, then the greater it is, or the closer it gets to a distance between the screens, the more indistinctive the individual bands become. It is also interesting that in measuring delta x, we can calculate the light wavelength, lambda. The distance between the two successive maximum values is the distance between interference bands, while that between two successive maximum values stands for the width of such interference bands. The main maximum value will correspond to M0 and will be located in the center. The first, second, etc. or the maximum value would fall on different sides. So we can see that the light can behave as a wave, but keep in mind that it only happens if the slits' widths are comparable to the length of the wave. If the slits' widths are increased, the lighting of the screen decreases and interference disappears.